ASEAN Economic Community, a region half the land area of the United States, a dynamic and diverse community of 600 million people, and the 8th largest economy in the world. It's a region with immense potential to do even more. By 2015, the ASEAN Economic Community promises to become a highly competitive, equitable, and globally integrated common market. Import duties for ASEAN goods and services will have been cut to zero. It'll be easier to invest in ASEAN. All industries will be open for investment. And any remaining barriers to investment will be removed and transparency will be enhanced. Yet challenges remain. Despite its rapid economic growth, average per capita GDP is less than $4,000 a year, and the gap between wealthy and poor is growing. And not all children go to school. In some ASEAN countries, up to half of 10-year-olds don't go beyond primary 5. The development of ASEAN's economies must go hand in hand with the development of its people. These challenges must be overcome in order for ASEAN to realize its full potential. And that is our focus today on Connecting ASEAN. Welcome to everybody here, our distinguished guests here at the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Naypyidaw, and also welcome to you watching at home. As we know, the ASEAN Economic Community is starting in earnest in 2015. Ever since leaders announced it in 2008, work has been going on the sidelines to try to bring the ASEAN economies together. And it feels a little bit like the preparations for the World Cup at the moment. There's the last-minute rush to get all the stadia ready, the infrastructure in place, and to make sure that the connectivity is there as well. And so with 2 years to go, the question is not just what does it mean for business? What does it mean for increased business, but also increased competition? But also whether the ASEAN community as a whole is ready to take on this challenge.
I totally embrace what our president had articulated some time ago with respect to how Indonesia ought to be by the end of 2015 in the context of our joining the ASEAN Economic Community. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, if you take a drive out of Jakarta for a mere 15 to 20 minutes, you will meet up with so many people who still don't have a clue as to what ASEAN Economic Community is and what it means to Indonesia. And you can imagine how that basically parlays into the 33 or 34 provinces and the 497 kabupatens and walikotas and all that. And I think it's a big challenge. Now, by 2015, December 31st, there's going to be a few boxes that Indonesia is likely not going to be able to check off. But that's okay, because by way of joining this community, we are only going to be encouraged and also forced to basically try to check off those boxes as early as possible. That's only by way of competition, not only coming from our brothers and sisters in the other ASEAN countries, but also from the world over.
Okay, so perhaps you could share with us, who do you think will be ready first, or will be ready on time, more likely to be ready on time? Will it be ASEAN ahead of 2015, or will it be Sao Paulo ahead of the World Cup? Who has a better chance of success?
Well, it depends on which team you're rooting. But Sao Paulo, the World Cup, that's going to be, I thought it was going to be in 2014.
That's my point. But the question, I guess, is, will all of these things, will they be in place in time? You mentioned, for example, parliamentary approvals, infrastructure. Who's got a greater chance of success?
Let me share with you the mood with which we spoke with each other the last couple of times. As of last year, when the economic ministers met up amongst the ASEAN, actually it wasn't identified and defined as to whether it would be the big or the middle part or the end of 2015. When we had set out this goal as early as 2003, that by 2015 we're going to have this beautiful economic community amongst ourselves. And I was the first to raise our hand. Hang on, is this going to be January 1st, June 1st, or December 31st? And we kind of like looked at each other. I was the first one to say, well, you know, in the interest of not only Indonesia, but I hope everybody, wouldn't it make sense if we were to set it out for the end of 2015? And it didn't take any more than a few seconds for everybody to agree. So that I think speaks of two things. Number one, that we understand each other. And number two, we'll do whatever it takes, whatever we have to do to get ready. And it may be a little bit after Sao Paulo.
And you managed to buy yourself a year in the space of those couple of seconds. Kishore, you obviously have a view of the region as a whole, and you don't have to couch your words quite so delicately as the Minister does this morning. And Minister, you were very diplomatic in saying, you know, some countries and some governments still need to pass these reforms.
Singapore is going to be ready.
But, you know, it's easy for a country of 700 square kilometers to be ready for anything at any time. Where do you see the bottlenecks to achieving that big vision of ASEAN 2015?
Before we speak about bottlenecks, it's important to emphasize the key point that the Minister has made about the level of commitment to ASEAN in the region. And that's something that I think people take for granted and say, hey, you know, this is something like the oxygen that we breathe in this room, but it's special and it's unique and we have to be aware of it. And the bottlenecks obviously are going to come, if you want me to be very blunt. In every country, there are vested interests. And so, for example, I mean, if you have, let's say, a car industry, and you're afraid that your car industry might be affected if you lower the tariff barriers, you're going to be concerned. And, you know, economic integration, in the short run, there's always pain. But in the long run...
For whom will there be pain?
Oh, I think anyone that opens up, whether it's Malaysia or Thailand or Philippines and others, there are vested interests that will be affected. So the political challenge for the leaders is how they balance the handling of this short-term pain against the long-term gain. And what's striking about ASEAN, and by the way, this has taken over 46 years. ASEAN was founded in 1967, so it's 46 years old. And if you have 1,000 meetings a year, you build up a kind of a corporate culture of what they call consultation and consensus. And that's developed what I call, and this is a strong term, but I think it's important to emphasize it, ASEAN is in real terms a modern miracle. And what's striking is how few are aware of what a miracle ASEAN is in many dimensions. And that also is a force that is going to drive this region, because in the face of all these geopolitical challenges and opportunities coming, in the face of all the political transitions that are going to happen in the region, if ASEAN remains strong and cohesive, it makes a huge difference.